Welcome to Coronaverse, the alternate timeline that absolutely no one wanted, but now we're all stuck in. I'm going to be bringing different people on to hear about their experience and see if we can't get better together. Today I have part of the How-To Heretic. If you haven't seen their podcast at all, fix yourself. They're amazing. There will be links in the description. Also, a quick apology. Just because of the quarantine, it's really difficult for me to do recording, especially live, without there being sounds from people that live near me. The next ones are going to be better, I promise. With all that out of the way, grab a drink, everyone, and let's begin. Thanks for coming on, guys. For everyone that doesn't know, these are two of the uncles from the How-To Heretic. I have Uncle Mark.
Hey, what's up? How's it going, guys?
And Uncle Doug.
Hello, everybody.
So, just in following with kind of what I'm pivoting and starting to do now, I just kind of want to hear about your experience so far, and some of the differences, some of the adjustments you guys have had to make, and also just some difficulties that you faced during this time where life has changed completely on a dime.
Okay. Well, I'll go first. This is Mark. It's funny. I work I work in the film business. I'm out of town a lot, and I've been out of town for almost the past year. It's solid. So I went from not being home at all. My circumstances are rather unusual. I went from not being home at all to not leaving the fucking house. It's now been over 4 weeks that I basically haven't left the house. And that's kind of unusual for me. My husband and I, who have basically been carrying on a long distance relationship, even though we live in the same house, are suddenly not doing that anymore. So it's been a super confusing time. It's been, I think you mentioned before we started recording, Vern, your mood swings, and I'm generally a pretty emotionally stable guy, but I definitely go from not euphoria, but a certain sense of well-being to utter despair 5 or 6 times a day. So that's been, and I'm just so everybody knows, I'm 51. So, I very clearly remember events like 9/11, and I remember the first Iraq War, and I'm old enough to remember the tail end of the Vietnam War a little bit. And this is completely new territory for me, right? Even someone of my advanced years hasn't really lived through a thing like this before. There's certainly people who've lived through war and being refugees and immigrating and stuff like that, and those are crazy stories. But just in our peer group, this is nothing I've experienced before.
And I actually appreciate you bringing that up because I think that some people have an attitude, and even some people, like younger people, have this idea that, oh no, like I just can't handle this. I'm clearly not adulting well enough. I don't, have the experience I need to overcome this. And that's not exactly the case. This is kind of a unique time.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. You know, every new experience you have is a new experience to you. And this is a massively new experience to, you know, I think almost the entire world is on some form of stay-at-home order or lockdown at this point. That I When the fuck has that happened? Like, that's like alien invasion level of weirdness. And so we're all confused. We're all scared. We're all um, having trouble sleeping. We all have nightmares. I've been having crazy nightmares, which is not normal for me. So, yeah.
Well, this is Uncle Doug, and listeners who don't know us from our show probably tell that our voices sound very similar, and it's because our DNA is basically the same, unfortunately for both of us. Mark and I are brothers.
Yeah.
And I'm not as ancient as Mark, but I also do remember 9/11 very well, and the Iraq War. And Uncle Mark's not wrong. Like this is uncharted territory. And so, listeners out there that maybe think that they're ill-equipped, well, you're not wrong, but so is everyone else. And I'm single. I'm a single guy, so I'm alone in this quarantine at home. And yesterday was a month of me being by myself, essentially, in my house. And like I said, I'm a single guy, ladies, or gentlemen. At this point, I don't fucking care.
Any ladies, when you get off your ventilator, shoot me your deets.
So there are some of your listeners, I'm sure, who are going through this alone as well, and it presents its own set of challenges, no doubt. But I would be willing to venture a guess that after a month of being stuck in your house with your significant other, a lot of people would change places with me in a heartbeat. But it is. I'm like Mark. I consider myself to be a pretty emotionally even-keeled guy, but it is impossible to escape the gravity well of the anxiety and the terror that this moment represents, and knowing what the future holds or not knowing what the future holds. And also knowing that our leadership in this time of crisis is lacking. So there's these layers of anxiety and these layers of fear and these layers of things that can cause depression and push people into darkness. And there ain't no getting away from it. It is there. You can manage it, but you have to acknowledge the fact that we're living with this anxiety. It's a part of us. And so, just hang in there, everybody. We're all in this mess together, and you're alone physically, but man, you are not alone as far as experiencing this tragedy.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that as isolated as so many of us feel, this is one of the most, this will be for the surviving generation, one of the most unifying experiences globally that anybody's ever had. Like as a planet, we're going through this together, yet here we are so alone. It's just one of the strangest things to wrap your head around. And I think that's part of the anxiety is because as human beings, we are desperate to understand the why of a thing. We're built to understand, to figure out why a thing is happening and to make sense of it. And it causes a huge amount of anxiety when we can't make sense of a thing. And right now, none of us can make sense of this thing. Like Doug said, we don't know what the future is. We don't know when this will end. We don't know how long all the systems that we have taken for granted and all the people who man those systems can hold out, right? And some systems are quite robust, others not so much. So because we can't, we don't understand exactly what the fuck it is and what the solution is, it's just this stomach churning daily unknown. And I think it's not a healthy thing to feel, but it's okay, right? We don't know what the end is here. we won't for a while. So just we talked about this on the show, I think, Doug, a couple of weeks ago, that sometimes the running from something that scares you causes more stress and anxiety than confronting it. Right. So there is a value to kind of sitting with stare the devil in the face, sit across from your fear for a while and really try to engage with it rather than try to sprint away from it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And this is something I was actually going to get into a little bit, because I have anxiety. So there were situations where I knew the whys, I knew the wins, I knew the how longs, and it would still cause me a lot of stress. So not knowing any of those things, it's a different level for myself. And
it's a bit worse, isn't it?
Yeah. But even for people that don't have anxiety, of course, this can still cause anxiety or depression or other things. And I wish I could say that this has helped me more, but I know how to deal with my usual anxiety, right? Like I had different coping mechanisms, different things I would do. Um, and the very basic of those was exactly what you said, Uncle Mark. Trying to run from your anxiety or your feelings, trying to turn them away or deflect them doesn't work. It essentially will just allow things to build. Maybe it works for smaller things,
Yeah.
but not this.
No, exactly. And I think that I've been, our family has a tremendous, Douglas and I, this, Vern, we grew up in a Mormon family that was incredibly dysfunctional. And and part of the dysfunction was some really serious mental illness that I think both Douglas and I count ourselves as incredibly lucky we seem to have avoided inheriting. So I'm not a person with I would not say I have anxiety as a clinical diagnosis, or depression as a clinical diagnosis. But uh, if what I'm dealing with on a daily basis is a real challenge as far as anxiety and depression, I can't imagine what it's like right now for people with those clinical issues, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, obviously my whole channel is themed around coffee. Take a step back from coffee if you're already feeling a lot of anxiety. Probably downing 3 cups of coffee in a row is not a good decision.
Oh.
Not that I know that from experience, but I definitely know that from experience.
Well, and that's part of getting through this that we've all got to kind of really think about, because I think most people, when this began, ran out and bought a bunch of food, stuck it in their fridge and their freezer and their cupboard. And that's good, right? We're it's not that kind of emergency, right?
This is the Mormon moment. This
Yeah,
is it. Like,
yeah.
we got this, motherfucker. We got more fucking cream of mushroom soup
And cracked
than
oats.
anyone on the planet.
And
Yeah.
yet, with all of that, Utah was the second worst state on panic buying.
I know.
How the hell does that make sense?
I know.
But the part of we're all kind of gaining weight during this crisis, which is its own set of problems. But you got to be careful about how you take care of yourself during this, because having some kind of healthful lifestyle is a great way to combat the virus, and B, not drinking too much alcohol or drinking too much coffee, or gorging on too much food, and just this all definitely adds to depression.
Hugely.
And so it's one thing you can affect. There's not a lot of things right now that we can have an effect on. This is one of those things that if you can take care of yourself a little bit during this time, you should. Because
I feel like you're talking directly at me, and I feel a little targeted. I get it. Fine. I'll tell you what I've been really struggling with, you guys, and you can tell me if you feel this as well. I'm having a terrible time focusing.
Oh, yes. Hugely.
I can't, suddenly I have this time. I almost haven't had a day off in the past year. That's just the nature of my work. And I feel like I could focus more when I was working, 70 hours a week. But now that's changed, and I can go to bed when I want. I can get up when I want. I can't leave the house, and so I've set myself up a bunch of projects and things to work on and engage with, and I just can't fucking spend more than 3 minutes on a thing without sputtering off into some kind of mental fugue. So
Definitely.
I think that's really common right now.
And I want to piggyback off that because I'm a student and I have an hour travel to my university. And that's just one way. So I'd have 2 hours of travel 5 days a week. And I could manage the workload. I could manage work itself, which I can no longer go to now. And I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually kind of excited when things went to online, because in my head I was thinking, I don't have to travel for 2 hours. Look at all this time I have to do schoolwork. This is perfect.
Uh-huh.
No, I just getting me in the place where I can actually start schoolwork takes at least an hour.
Yeah, isn't it strange that we have we have many of us, not everybody. There's a lot of people who are still working,
Mm-hmm.
Still making the wheels turn, which is amazing. And then there's a lot of people stuck at home with kids that didn't have this time of year and still having to telework or whatever.
Right.
But I personally, I have all this time right now, and I'm really having a hard time making any kind of, and I don't want to use the word productive, because I think that's a train that we kind of need to get off of a little bit. Especially as Americans, it's so drilled into our heads that if we're not producing something for someone, for the boss, then we're just abject failures. And and even my non-productive stuff, where I just want to sit and read a book, I just can't focus on it.
Yeah.
Watching a movie, I just can't focus on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that will settle in as we all get used to this extremely abnormal normal, but that's been a huge struggle for me.
I've it's such a Groundhog Day situation we're in, where there is no difference between one day and the next, just that the news gets worse every day. And the things that we would normally look forward to, like the weekend, I'm still working, I'm teleworking, but it's just such a different mindset that you're looking forward to Saturday. Why? Saturday is just like Tuesday in every way.
Yeah.
I'm in the same house, I'm in the same sweatpants, I'm eating the same frozen crap. And so the I think that repetitiveness in just begins to draw your mind away from kind of milestones and goals that you would normally have in your regular life.
Yeah, right. The Stations of the Cross of every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I so took for granted the little interactions of the barista kids at my coffee place in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And how much I love them and adore them, and I don't know how they're doing, and I wouldn't even know how to get a hold of them to find out.
Yeah.
And thinking about all the times I blew someone off to go get coffee or get a drink or have dinner because I was too tired from work. And it's like, wow, I will never do that again.
Because now you're forced into not doing that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to all those people. And you take for granted how even the interaction with the barista or, the clerk at the store, those are social interactions that kind of fill the need that you have as a human being for contact with other human beings, that all those little moments during the day are so meaningful now that you don't have them anymore.
And I want to add to that as well, because I'm a very touchy person. So I'll see someone and I'll give them a big hug, and I'll constantly be interacting with people. So often I'm cuddling with my wife at night or something, just because I crave the actual physical touch as well.
Yeah.
From so many people that I usually interact with, whether it is a hug or even just like a high five or something, and all of that is gone too.
Yeah, well, I don't mind high-fiving being gone, because I think that's toxic masculinity and very heteronormative. So I'm glad to see that go. But I do like a good handshake and a hug. I do like a good hug.
I mean, the cosmetic changes this is going to cause to our society will be, I think, we're probably not going to be shaking hands anymore. That's just something that will fade away, and that's okay. But all of the other things that we're going to have to live with in this new world, that there will be a world that comes after this. And, how are we all going to interact with each other? Are we going to go back to immediately kind of taking for granted those interactions we had, and the fact that you can go to a restaurant and have some food made by someone else and not you?
And not freak out about it, and not be like, fuck,
right.
is this meal going to kill me?
Well, Uncle Mark and I've taken this very seriously from the beginning, and I'm also, I wouldn't call myself a prepper, but I would not call myself that. I mean, I kind of had a lot of stuff laid in supply, and so I
stole it all. I took it.
From the moment this got going, I started taking this very seriously, in the how I sanitize things, how I dealt with my cell phone or my credit card, the things that other people touched, and got to this point where now, if I go to the store and buy groceries, when I have to, I wear a mask, I wear gloves, I sanitize everything when I get back. It's this giant laborious exercise that's really not tenable. This is not this. We cannot live a life like this.
Yeah, we can't live like 12 monkeys. It's just
Right.
it's unsustainable
And
civilization.
so, you know, but is this going to be a year? Is it going to be 18 months? Is it going to be 3 months?
Who knows?
Who fucking knows?
You know, we're all taking distraction as much as we can, right? Like thank God streaming services exist.
Seriously.
Can you imagine without internet and streaming? Like people that have survived plagues before just had to hunker down in their house with nothing.
And just stare at the wall.
Yeah, with a crucifix and just hope that St. Anthony made it all okay. But we have all this connection and we have all this great fiction. And there's an amazing book that I think about a lot these days called The White Plague that was written by Frank Herbert, who wrote the Dune books, right? And it's a really brilliant book about a guy who, a genetic engineer. What was he, Doug? Like a virologist or genetic engineer?
He was like a genetic scientist or some kind.
And he, as an act of revenge for his wife and daughters getting killed, he engineers a plague that only kills women and kind of unleashes it upon the world. And it's fascinating to read the world going through this thing. And then it kind of finishes with the world that came after. Mm. And I think, you know, going back to what Doug says, how is the world going to be different when this is all over? And that's a great examination of how things can change.
Right.
For both better and for worse. Right. And I think we're staring down the barrels of both of those possibilities, is that there is potential for excellent change and more positive change and more humanist change, but there is also a very strong potential for the opposite.
Definitely.
Right.
Well, we did a big deep dive on our show about this, the kind of the post coronavirus world, because one day there will be a vaccine and we will be on the other side of this. But you know, who's going to dictate how that new world is built? And you know, when we were talking about this, I think we got to the point where it really is us that, you know, the Jared Kushners of the world would have it be built by them if they could.
Yeah.
But we all have to pitch in and try and participate in our democracy and in our society in a way that makes it a world that's better than the one we left, if we can do that.
Yeah.
And I kind of hope that all of this is a spur to people that maybe don't vote or feel like their vote doesn't count. Now we're seeing the effects.
You know what would be great right now? A very competent technocratic president that knew how to pull and maneuver the levers of government to help its citizens. That sure would be nice right now.
We are living through what we're living through right now for two reasons. One, nature is unpredictable and it does what it does. The second is because 60-something million Americans did not take their civic duty seriously. Mm-hmm. And hopefully this awakens a passion, or at least a seriousness in people who were not engaged before, to understand that my health, my good health, depends on your good health. And
preach it.
That this is not this fucking plague does not discriminate against anyone. It simply is looking for a home to reproduce. Yep. And so if you're rich, you might be able to avoid that for a little bit longer. You might be able to, you know, your walls are a little bit higher, but not forever. And hopefully the people taking citizenship seriously. But part of the American mythos is that we're the greatest country in the world and we can solve any problem. And I think this has shattered that. And we, as a society, as you know, Americans who've been under this spell for so long, are waking up to realize, under this leadership, the cavalry's not fucking coming, right? They're not. Well, we are going to have to wait for the Germans or the Chinese or the Japanese or someone to develop this vaccine, because it's not going to happen here, because it's just not a priority. Human life is not a priority to this administration and to the political movement that put it in place. So
I might push back on you, Mark, a little bit there, because I'm not going to sit here and let you shit on my country. We lead the world in the number of infected people. We lead the world in the number of dead people from this virus. We are bar none number one.
I mean, Trump did say he wanted US to be number one.
Yeah.
You got it.
I think we're doing a good job tamping down everybody's anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm going to latch on that because unfortunately I'm running out of time a little bit on my end too. Because it kind of at the base of this is that there's a hope for change for the better in the future. So messing with that a little bit, for each of you personally, what are some surprising positive changes that have come up? So for example, for me, as I mentioned, I was traveling a lot, even just to go to school, going to work. I didn't have much of any time. So I have found myself with an abundance of time, and I get to do stupid things like trying over and over to make latte art, which has been a massive pain in the ass, but it's also been oddly fun and something that I don't think I would have put the time aside for earlier. Because in my mind, it would have been, that's dumb, it's silly, it doesn't do really much of anything for me, so why would I pursue it? And then now I wake up and get things ready and think, let's take another crack at that latte art and just get, incrementally better, and it's satisfying. So that's a really odd, positive change that all of this has brought me.
I'll give you one for myself, and that is who we value as a culture has not necessarily changed, but has been brought into sharp focus for me.
A bright light has been shined on it for sure.
People who work in grocery stores, people who drive delivery trucks, people who pick up your garbage.
Yeah.
These are indispensable, incredibly important.
The shit on immigrants that pick our food.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
make our food.
You can take every hedge fund manager in the country and put them on a boat and sink it for all I fucking care.
Yeah.
These people are the valuable citizens. They're the people who make it work. And I'll never forget that. For me, it's very positive. I'll never look at those people the same way again. Nurses,
and hopefully
doctors.
No one will look at them the same way. Like hopefully that's a permanent change, and living wage can actually be a thing, because now we have seen as a society, as the world, that these people are who we depend on for everything.
Yeah, definitely this has exposed all the flaws in the system. And I hope that's a lesson we all take forward. I was just what a positive thing that's kind of come out of this for me is I live in a kind of a townhouse community, and we have a message board, and just the way the neighbors have kind of stepped up as a community. Last night, one of the neighbors dropped off to all the house. There's 32 townhouses. Dropped off a bag on the front porch with homemade chicken tikka masala, naan bread, and brownies to everyone. And pardon me, they're going to make a meal every Saturday for the entire community.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So that made us all feel like shit. So now we're all stepping up to say, okay, well, here's what I've got. I cleaned out my garage. I had a tremendous amount of art supplies stored up from work over the years that I'm not going to be able to use. So I said, at 6 o'clock, I'm going to put them all out on my front porch. Anybody with kids, anybody in the community who wants them, please come take what you want. It's free. So everybody's kind of doing that. And that's really beautiful in my neighborhood. I'm very pleased by that.
And that goes back to in this extreme isolation that everyone's facing, we're somehow becoming more connected in ways.
Yeah. And so cool I think seek that out. I think, kind of those people that make the Indian food challenged us to kind of be better as a community, and people are stepping up, and it's kind of fantastic.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on with me and just chatting about things. I know that, obviously you guys are kind of used to it, and if any of you are not familiar with the How-To Heretic, they're amazing, and they have kind of gone into this before as well. And I think that it's another level to be vulnerable in a public space.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, especially you, Mark, you were part of the reason why I wanted to do this, and have first myself and then other people come on and share their experience and be willing to do that, to drop the facades, drop the masks, and show the humanity that everyone has and that we're facing.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you so much again for coming on. Check them out if you haven't. I'll leave a link in the description for their podcast, as well as probably their YouTube channel, because I've heard the guy that runs that is just awesome.
He's difficult. But
yeah, that sounds about right.
It's creative personalities. You just have to learn to manage creative personalities. Well, listen, anytime. We're here for you anytime, and we're happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good day, guys.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Be safe.